Hey, everyone. Welcome to Locked On Lakers for Thursday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. Andy, if you'd have told me 2 months ago that Matt Ryan might have saved the Lakers season, I'd have said the quarterback? That's next on Locked On Lakers.
He didn't even save their season.
He was terrible.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, no matter how or where you get your podcasts. Always free, never behind a paywall. Make another Locked On podcast your second listen of every day. Good thing that this episode, which by the way is brought to you by Prize Picks, Andy. Prize Picks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. It's a good thing that this episode, not behind a paywall, because that was one of the more entertaining and fascinating basketball games that I have seen in a long time. And in a twist, it had a happy ending for the Lakers and Lakers fans. None of those things have been true for a long time. So much to cover today, but wow, that was an interesting game.
It really was on a lot of different levels. You're seeing a lot of decisions being made by Darvin Ham, like really thinking out a lot of rotation moves and lineup combinations very much on the fly. A few that have worked out very well, a few that I thought were questionable during this game, but they ended up working out well. Some interesting stuff with LeBron happening in this game. That they managed, we'll get into it, but just that they managed to pull out this overtime win without LeBron playing anywhere, we hope, close to his best this season is significant. But we got to start, Brian, with G League Matty Ice, the hero of this game. Nobody saw this coming.
Yeah, I mean, if you didn't see how this game was going down, the Lakers, it looked like all was lost. 1.8 seconds left, I believe it was. They got a gift on the other end. Who missed it? Was it Daniels who missed the two free throws for the Pellies? But they had a chance to win it. They don't, and this is what
And by the way, they had blown. They had a 16-point lead in the third quarter.
To your point about like watching things evolve, that play with Matt Ryan, again, who I had literally no idea was anybody other than the former quarterback of the Falcons, now former quarterback really of the Colts, before the Lakers signed the guy. That play, when you go and you look at it and you break it down in terms of the stuff you're talking about, Andy, contributions from other people on a night LeBron wasn't very good. Darvin Ham growing in and evolving in this role. You look at that play. Ham said after the game he kind of left his ATO card, the card he's got for these after timeout plays, didn't bring it with him and just picked a play, went with what he wanted, was right, got the guys on the floor, was organizing with it. He's new at this as a head coach. Like, these moments are all a little bit new, a little bit different, working with a different roster, whatever. The guy who throws the pass, and man alive, was that a brilliant pass from Austin Reaves.
Cross court, difficult as hell, this pass that he threw.
To Matt Ryan in the corner, who gets it, catches it, keeps his feet inbounds, keeps his feet behind the three-point line, and manages to get the shot off. So you have a rookie head coach drawing up a ballsy play out of the timeout, to being thrown by a second-year player who was undrafted to I think Ryan is technically a second-year player, played a little bit with the Celtics last year or something like that, but mostly he drives for DoorDash, and and so he, to that guy who makes the shot. And
it was a designed play, by the way,
for
Matt Ryan.
It was on purpose.
Which also, too, was interesting, like sort of like the interesting within the interesting, because the play before that, They're down the stretch, and Stu Lance even noted that the 5 men on the court didn't include Matt Ryan, which, as they were setting up for the original shot that they missed before Matt Ryan ended up hitting the buzzer beater to push to overtime.
Right. It was play Lonnie Walker, and two wide open three. I mean, a wide open three to Lonnie Walker.
But he missed a corner three. But Stu Lance had noticed that Matt Ryan wasn't out there, and it seemed like a time for him to be out there. And frankly, I was wondering why Patrick Beverley was out there, because it was a game where he scored 0 points, was increasingly growing, for reasons I understood in this game, unconfident with his shot. And Patrick Beverley actually passed up a wide open three to throw the. Hold on.
Go ahead. I disagree with you a little bit, but go ahead.
Well, but to pass the ball to Lonnie Walker in the corner, Lonnie Walker ends up missing. The Lakers, though, like you said, end up getting this gifted overtime when Daniels misses both free throws. LeBron gets the defensive rebound, immediately calls timeout. This play gets drawn up, and at this point, Matt Ryan's put into the game, but Lonnie Walker's off the floor. Patrick Beverley's still out there, which I'm wondering, like, seriously, what is Darvin doing? Because Beverley seems like the obvious guy in this case to be off the floor. And my objection with Beverley throwing the pass to Walker in the corner wasn't the idea of him necessarily passing up a good shot for him. And again, this was wide open for potentially a better one for Lonnie Walker. It was Pat Beverley clearly was not going to take that shot no matter what. And they did not have enough time to have anybody on the court who was not going to fire if they had an open shot. And Patrick Beverley is supposed to be one of their 3-point shooters.
Right. Okay.
So I just don't think he should have been on the court in the first place.
Fair enough. I will say, to defend Pat Bev, and I think this is in this show, we're going to talk a lot about the evolving rotation. Big picture, I think there's a lot to what you're saying. And the role of Patrick Beverley is evolving like a lot of others are evolving, or in the case of Kendrick Nunn, devolving. I will say, after watching the replay a couple times, Pat Bev passed up what would have been a mildly contested shot for a completely uncontested shot for Lonnie Walker. It was a better, and Walker wasn't rushed. He had time to take it. He wasn't squeezing him. It was the right play, I think, from Pat Bev to make that pass. And I will say, Beverley, along with Reaves, a couple times, earned them extra possessions.
Yeah.
A few extra. So
I'm not saying that Patrick Beverley played horrible in the game. Just
no, but all I'm saying is there were other aspects of the utility that I think demonstrated why Darvin wanted him on the floor, in terms of decision making and all that kind of stuff, that I think actually paid off in certain ways. But as we continue talking about this, what happens to Patrick Beverley, how much he keeps playing, how much you can keep playing 4-on-5 offensively, because he has become, again, I think I noted it on Wednesday's show, his high water mark for field goals in a game this year is 2.
With Russell Westbrook now clearly thriving in this role off the bench, and the bench thriving as a byproduct of him in that role, Patrick Beverley, you and I were texting back and forth, I think is going to start becoming the new Russ, in the sense that now people are going to start focusing on offensively what he's not providing, because it's been pretty stark. But again, though, before we even start,
Schroeder's not, and when Schroeder hasn't played a minute yet, and so well, I guess technically he has, but maybe I forget when he got hurt. But the point is, when Schroeder is available, that adds a whole other dude to this thing, and I think is going to cut down considerably on Beverley's playing time.
But we'll get into the rotation and all that stuff coming up. But it is worth noting what a hell of a moment for Matt Ryan, and you could see how incredibly happy everybody on the team was for him. I mean, that was just it was very, as I joked about on Twitter, at Cam Brothers, Matt Ryan is the new Austin Reaves, referencing Austin hitting that big shot against Dallas last year, and not just because of the obvious jokes.
Yeah. You know how happy the Lakers and the rest of the team clearly were for Matt Ryan. It was one of the only things that got Russ to say more than 3 words after the game. So he was willing to express his happiness for Matt Ryan. But let's talk about Russ, because in terms of, again, interesting things that happened, the game within the game, so to speak, it was kind of a fascinating night for the Russell Westbrook experiment. And so we'll do that next.
Hey, Laker fans, have you signed up yet? Hey, Laker fans, have you signed up yet for Prize Picks? Because if you haven't, you're missing out. This is daily fantasy made easy. Prize Picks has the best NBA DFS prop game on the market. They offer more NBA props than any other DFS prop operator. They offer superstar players as well as bench players, giving you a wide variety. You can go for like 2 to 5 players, predict if they'll score more or less, notch more or less than their Prize Picks projections, those stats. And Prize Picks, if you're just one of those people that love sports, they are the place for you. They are the prop operator for you, because they offer NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL, PGA, college football, men's college basketball, women's college basketball, soccer, WNBA, esports.
Those sports are all fine, but what if I want a prop operator that can give me some action on disc golf?
They offer you disc golf, Brian. They offer you cricket. They offer boxing. I guess unless you are a highlight addict, Prize Picks has. Well, you know what? They offer and more. Maybe they do offer highlight, and I'm just ignorant. Use the award-winning app on both the App Store and Google Play. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. Really easy, safe, fast withdrawals. Download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com. Sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match for up to $100 using the promo code Locked On. If you deposit $100, Prize Picks gives you $100. It's that easy. But again, use that promo code Locked On at the sign up for the instant match. If you're not playing Prize Picks, you don't know what you're missing.
All right, Andy. So Russell Westbrook, this is the 3rd game now that he's come off the bench, and this is, I think, we are officially in. Russell Westbrook is the 6th man for the Lakers, is going to come off the bench. Like, this isn't going to change.
No, as I joked about on Twitter, I'm now concerned about what happens if Darvin Ham ever needs him to start. Like, is he going to refuse now? I mean, things are going so well.
It's a reverse.
I mean, all kidding aside, Russ is actually, if this keeps up, he's preserving his career.
Oh, no question.
If there were signs. And, you know, you and I disputed the idea that Russ was faking some hamstring as a protest towards coming off the bench. We've pushed up against that since the beginning. But if there had been any signs that Russ really was not willing to do this, there is a very non-0% chance he'd be out of the league after this season, because there's no obvious role for him.
Correct. Absolutely. It'd be like Carmelo Anthony. Like, you just nobody is going to be willing to let him do the thing that made him who he was. And until Melo was willing to do something else, he wasn't on a team.
Same thing I think would have happened to Dwight had DeMarcus Cousins not have gotten hurt in the title season.
Very possible. I will say this. I mean, you know, never underestimate the power of spite and anger when it comes to Russ, because I mentioned his press conference after the game, and like the table that he speaks at needs to be quite large to accommodate both him and the chip that is obviously on his shoulder when he does it. Because I think he is, you know, the attitude is in part, and the embracing it, so to speak, whatever, if you want to call it that, is in part as a big bleep you to all the people who said he can't do it, won't do it, whatever.
We'll fake a hamstring to get out of doing it.
All of that. So I do think there's an element of that in there. And, you know, he's just as combative and just as edgy with the media and picking fights with Dan Wakey and all these other things. And so I think that's a large part of it. But, you know, you saw what happened on Wednesday. Westbrook's first run in the first half was dominant. It was the best stretch that he has had, to my memory, low bar to clear, but to my memory, in LA. It was flat out dominant in the first half. He was pushing pace. He was finishing at the rim. He was finding guys left and right, particularly Troy Brown, who was like, I'm just going to move and get 5 or 6 easy buckets just moving near with Russ, and Russ is going to get me paid next year. Like, he was dominant, all-star Russ, whatever. And he was a big reason the Lakers were able to make that push at the end of the second half, where, defensively and offensively, the Lakers were overwhelmingly good. And
you mean the end of the first half?
At the end of the first half, yeah, thank you. Won the second quarter 33-17. I think they were at 39 points with 3.5 or whatever minutes left in the half. They finished with 56. Like, that's like 4 games worth of scoring for this team. In the second half, Russ wasn't bad. That's not what I'm saying. But the effect wasn't as strong. He was a plus 11 in the first half. He was a minus 7 in the second half. The stats weren't quite as good. I think everybody on the team got a little bit caught up, Russ included, in sort of, ooh, Russ is back. Let's, Russ going to cook. Like, let's replicate what happened in the first half.
A lot of folks who were minus in the second half.
There were.
It was not just him.
I'm not blaming Russ. I'm just saying.
I'm just clarifying.
I think they were all so excited about how it worked at the beginning of the game. And, like, look, the team wants Russ to thrive here. So, I mean, the guys are kind of pulling for him. LeBron very clearly was trying to take a backseat when Russ was rolling to make sure that Russ continued to have the ball
some
in
nice
his hands.
moments playing off.
They really did. It was great. But Darvin recognized that it wasn't as effective in the second half and felt no obligation to keep him on the floor, despite what was a very positive overall stat line and what will be remembered as a good game for Westbrook. I thought that was really fascinating to see Ham's willingness to say, not working as well this time. I'm under no obligation to keep Russ on the floor, to give him 30 minutes, to have him finish a game, whatever it is. Perfect balance, I think, there in terms of Ham kind of controlling his rotation, but also giving Westbrook the opportunity to have as much good time on the floor as possible.
Well, he's already closed the previous 2 games that he played off the bench.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember if Russ was on the floor in the literal moments that the games closed, but he played closer's minutes in a closer's role in those previous 2 games, which has made clear. And, there was that controversial time against Portland where Darvin, we both thought, made a mistake putting Russ back into a game where he was not playing well, that there was a logical reason to do it. But the point being, though, since Russ has come off the bench, Darvin has made it clear that he is not just a typical bench guy, that for the most part, you don't expect bench players to be in a closing role. Mm-hmm. Outside of like the elevated Lamar Odom when he was a 6-man during the title runs, where he was easily one of the 5 best players on the Lakers, easily one of the 5 most important. He was playing off the bench because of the roster construction and the need for him to do that, which in certain respects is the same thing with Russ.
Mm-hmm.
So Russ has the opportunity to close these games out. But like you said, beyond the fact that there's no obligation to do it, it seems like the politics of not doing it so far have dissipated, because it seems like even if Russ is not happy with not being on the floor in those closing moments, it seems like he is willing to play ball with it enough. And that I think he has enough respect for how Darvin has been coaching this team, but also how he and Darvin have been interacting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to be honest, I think this helps. I think Russ recognizes the appreciation that is there for him doing what he's doing, even if it is obvious that he should be doing it. Doesn't mean that it's easy for him. Doesn't mean that he likes it. And I think there's a team-wide recognition. Just he's doing something he doesn't like, so there should be certain allowances for it, even if not total allowances.
And the other thing that I think will benefit Westbrook and benefit the Lakers, if they can, if Westbrook continues to play pretty well in this role, and each game has gotten better. That first game was like, oh, he did it, and ooh, there were some good moments. I can the actual line itself was very inefficient. It was a little up and down, but like it was like, oh, he did it, and it, like, the world didn't turn off its axis. The second game was better. 50% from the floor, looked better. This one was better than the other two. And so as he gets more comfortable, there's, I think, at least some hope that, okay, there could be a niche here, particularly as Darvin gets better about matching the right guys with him and all of that kind of stuff. But the other thing that's going to benefit him is he doesn't have to finish games or be dominant down the stretch or whatever to flip the narrative, to make it a redemption story, to make it like we talked about it on Wednesday show. Lakers fans want this to work. Tuesday show, Lakers fans want this. They're like, everybody inside that building wants to see a winning product, and no, people don't hate Russ necessarily. They sort of hate what he's done to the team and when things are going bad, but like they want this to be something they can cheer for.
Well, especially if it's not a given that he's going to get traded, and it's not. There is a non-0% chance that Russell Westbrook will be on this team after the deadline. So that being the case, you want it to work as well as it can. I think it's also telling too, Brian, that, while some of this may have been a byproduct of Russ being in both teams played hard mode, his version of it, I'm just competing. He was not asked at all about not closing.
It's true.
This did not come up.
A couple other things I want to get to from LeBron to Troy Brown.
Rotation
significant stuff happening there. And so let's do that next. It's worth reiterating, I think, Andy, the point you made earlier. LeBron James, 9 of 23 from the floor, didn't make a three-pointer in 7 tries. Very inefficient 20 points on 23 shots. He was not good. I mean, not efficient by his standards. He came into the game questionable with a foot injury, and he looked like a guy who was laboring to some degree. You had a bunch of stats that you listed in terms of his inefficiency that with our show with Howard on Wednesday. It is a big deal that they managed to win this game with LeBron taking 23 shots, only making 9, only two free throws made on the night, didn't make a three-pointer. It's a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, and said it with Howard, and I'll say it again. I think it's flown under the radar because there's been so much other stuff going on with the Lakers so far to begin this season. Like, LeBron has not been very efficient, certainly as a scorer, but I don't know about where they are right now, but his turnovers per 36 were at a career high. His overall field goal percentage is among the worst. I think it's like second lowest of his career. And it's not just because he's shooting 26% from 3 or was heading into this game at a high volume. It's probably lower now.
It's much lower now because he's
going to be probably about 20. Yeah, it's probably 22, 23%. I don't have the numbers right in front of me. At a high volume, his 2-point percentage is also at a lower third of his career. He has not been finishing well around the rim. This has been, by LeBron's standards, a pretty unimpressive start. And, it in part, and I think this has flown under the radar as well, explains some of the offensive woes the Lakers have had this year, because the outside shooting is the most glaring thing because it has been historically awful. But, LeBron's inability to finish, like LeBron James, affects the entire offense. I think it's significant that even if they shouldn't have been in this position because they had a 16-point lead, that they were able to find ways to do this without LeBron carrying them, which, during the LeBron era in LA has often not been the case. They've often been staggeringly dependent on LeBron. Like the plus minus numbers of him on versus off the court have been like comically lopsided.
Yeah. And to your point, it is. And one more thing, like, you talk about just ways LeBron averaging a career low. I believe it's a career, certainly a last few years low. Yes, career low, 5.3 free throw attempts in a game. And again, that went down that was before Wednesday's game. So yeah, you're right. Like, he's not quite doing it with the efficiency, because if you're not going to hit from three, you get to the line, it's a big difference. He's not really getting to the line either. So if he's not going to be carrying the team offensively, it puts that much more of an onus, first of all, on Anthony Davis, but second on Darvin to get the right guy, both get the right guys on the floor, and then for other guys to step up. We saw 28 points from Lonnie Walker on Wednesday. This was, I think, the perfectly idealized version of Walker. That was huge, but they had
2 good games in a row from Lonnie.
Yeah. They had 6 guys in double figures. And so they were able to spread it around. That includes Troy Brown. It includes Matt Ryan. And so, they're getting production from sources that maybe, certainly in the case of Ryan, but, getting some production from places that people like us were skeptical of. I was not sure about Walker. Still some things I'm not totally sure about, but overall, I've been pretty pleased. 28, he had played 40 minutes on Wednesday, 28 points. But this rotation is evolving. Kendrick Nunn is basically out of it. Matt Ryan seems to be in it. And Troy Brown has proven to be a massive part of it.
Yeah, Juan Toscano-Anderson did not play in this game. It was not clear whether that was him being out of the rotation versus them being cautious with that ankle sprain that made him unavailable for the first win, the one against Denver. So I'll be curious to see if Juan plays on Friday. But, certainly Kendrick Nunn not being in the rotation that's a decision by Darvin Ham, and I don't mean a bad one. I'm just saying, like, that's, Kendrick Nunn was last season's mid-level exception acquisition. He is somebody that you and I both had pretty high hopes for heading into this season, or hopes that he could be an impactful player.
Oh, I was absolutely thought he would be a major difference maker. And to this point, I have been incorrect.
Look, man, when we were doing our bold prediction show, one of my bold predictions was Kendrick Nunn will play himself into the rare re-signed long-term Laker that isn't a bona fide superstar. And thus far, that doesn't seem to be happening. And Darvin is, we noted that talking back and forth, Patrick Beverley's minutes have been slowly
going down every game. And again, Dennis Schroeder is waiting in the wings. So,
right.
And Schroeder's going to play.
And Schroeder has a familiarity with Darvin Ham too, because of their years in Atlanta together. So that's interesting. Patrick Beverley played 27 minutes in a game that went to overtime. So had it not had those extra 5 minutes, I think you're right. The minutes would have probably kept going down. Troy Brown Jr., I had been very optimistic that he could be helpful just, by virtue of having a guy his size and with sort of his player profile. But he does a lot of really good things out there, man. He plays very hard. He's so active. Like, I don't know if he and Russell Westbrook benefit from familiarity in that one season together in Washington, but they have a really nice chemistry in a short amount of time, despite the fact that they haven't necessarily played in the same, starting unit, bench unit, whatever, since these things have been flip-flopped around. But I really like what he does out there. He doesn't really make many mistakes, at least the ones that don't shoot out at you is like, oh my God, what are you thinking, man? Like he's been a really, really nice addition since coming back from that back injury. And I think he's made a difference.
Absolutely. I mean, 15 points on Wednesday, 10 rebounds and assists. And hit knocked down a 3. It's like he is able to contribute.
10 rebounds, by the way, too. He hits the glass. Remember, I'd said before last week, I wasn't sure exactly why, because to be honest, I have not seen Troy Brown on a game in, game out.
You're not
basis,
a Troy Brownophile?
Well, he's always been in the East, and he, frankly, playing on uninteresting teams for the most part. But his rebounding numbers at like cleaning the glass and stuff like that were very good. Like his overall effect on the team, like his percentiles were very good, despite the numbers themselves, his raw rebounding numbers not being incredible. But I had hoped that maybe he could help with that. the Lakers' rebounding numbers and rebounding performances have been better since he's been available.
Yeah. He's got, what is that? 24 rebounds in the last 3 games. So that's, somebody help me with the math. That's 8 a game.
8 a game.
Pretty good
at that position. That's good.
Yeah. And so, just the optionality that he provides. And if it's one of those deals, like he's not going to be the best 3-and-D wing in the league, but he's clearly the best one on this team. And they needed one in the lineup. They needed the ability to put one on the floor, and that he's playing pretty well is a bonus, and is the kind of thing that, again, is going to shuffle people around. And, we'll keep exploring some of this stuff as the season goes on, and Darvin keeps shaking this stuff out. But if you see Ryan play a little bit more, if you see Troy Brown play a little bit more, at some point, Juan Toscano-Anderson, I think, is going to resurface a little bit. But that impact, that means Kendrick Nunn's not going to play. We're not going to see, I think, a lot of these centers. And even when Thomas Bryant comes back, the way things are looking right now, we're not going to see a lot of that. And Damian Jones is going to be stapled to the bench, short of an injury, it seems.
Wenyen Gabriel is playing, I think, just good enough to keep some minutes. But you're right.
To do that stuff, like when you need a bigger body to just suck it up and play against someone bigger than him and absorb some minutes and do some of that stuff. They like what Wenyen does, in short minutes. It's very predictable, if nothing else. You know exactly what you're going to get from him. And the willingness of Ham to make these adjustments quickly early in the season with a bunch of guys where going into the season, it's like I had guesses about, I'm optimistic about this guy. I don't know about that guy or whatever. But part of the problem was you didn't know how any of them really would fit. Whether, you're talking about Brown or Schroeder or, Westbrook or Reaves or like Walker or any of these guys, you could see huge roles for all of them or no roles. I will say I'm surprised that no role part's fallen to none. So the next 4 or 5 games, particularly if the Lakers can manage to win a couple of them here and there, are going to be instructive. But pulling out this one, Andy, as we get ready to wrap up here, the big difference between 2-5 and 1-6. And had they lost this game where they were up by 16 in just heartbreaking fashion, I don't want to say it is a backbreaker in the same way. I don't want to say
it just makes the Denver game feel like
turn it around.
But it makes the Denver win feel like a fluke. It just makes you question, like, what happened there? Are they really making progress?
And now I think you can feel like, there's a little more reason to be optimistic here as they go into Friday's game with a shockingly good Utah team. But
THT revenge game.
That's right, home game that they again they needed. These are all must wins, or not must wins, but
Brian, they're must wins. When you start 0-5, it's must win.
You got to make some of this stuff up. You got to make some ground up. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you go to see the show, catch it, and see all the fun stuff that we do and our handsome faces. Make sure to make another Locked On podcast your second listen of every day, but only after making us your first. We'll see everybody on Friday.